All right, hello, it's Matt Hall here on this side, and of course I'm joined by...
Andrew Taylor right over here on the right-hand side, and welcome back to Waketober.
That's right, it's another episode of Flippin' Thru. This is the episode where, last time around we did cover the Alan Wake official survival guide from Prima Games. When you bought this back in the day, it came bundled with Alan Wake Illuminated, which...
If you're curious about the official guide, well, why don't you go check out our past video? I saw it. It was pretty good.
Yeah, it was all right.
And now we're going to take a look at Alan Wake Illuminated. Was that cool?
That was so cool. So, I was told this is like an art book, and I don't love art. I've seen some game art books where it's like...
I don't love art.
No, art sucks, first of all. Don't get me started on that.
As I look around your room, covered in
nothing.
There's nothing in here.
No, I've seen other game art books that are just like screenshots of the game where it's like, oh, cool, someone who's good at photo mode essentially made like a fucking like scrapbook. Yeah.
And here is a picture of the guy, and it's cool. Yeah, what do we got going on in the back?
On the back here, this will show up on camera. Very subtle,
That's where you spilled all your drinks?
It's interesting. There's the Taken.
You mentioned that before.
Very subtly in there.
Yeah, in the...
on the game's cover.
It doesn't seem like it's in every, because I didn't see it on the official guide, but there's the Taken in the trees of the Alan Wake logo as well.
In the reflection of the trees on the water.
Yes, and then as well as like a large Alice's face. It's very cool. There's a lot more to it than just a title.
Yeah. If you grab that novel right there, you can see what we're talking about, I believe.
Hey, there it is.
Where, there's the face of Alice Wake, and then if you turn it upside down, you can see that these trees, the reflection, are actually the silhouettes of the Taken.
That's really sick.
Yeah. Anyway, get that out of here.
That reminds me of, there's the Burger King chicken fries, which I know you're familiar with.
Yes, I remember when those came out.
Yeah, they have that really interesting little, like, compartment that when you open the box, the top turns into a dip container.
Yeah, that was revolutionary at the time.
Yeah, I think the Alan Wake logo is very similar.
So, when I got this, I heard, actually it's more than an art book. And I said, good, because the last thing I want to look at is just like a bunch of screen caps of the fucking game.
If it's done lazily, yeah, like that, it's like, well, what kind of value is this giving to me?
So, but what we find out is this is Alan Wake creating a psychological action thriller.
Whoa.
This is actually a making of book.
All right.
So here, this is something really interesting. It's called a table of content.
Wow.
And it has, it's basically a table of sorts that has all of the content of the book listed in the order in which it appears in the book.
Man, they came up with so much cool stuff.
Whoa! So here we have a glamour shot of Mr. Sam Lake.
He's looking good.
He's looking good. You can read this yourself in your own time.
I will.
So it starts off with a brief history of Remedy Entertainment.
And they kind of like, I'm assuming consistently they have like Alan, and then they have the one. That's kind of cool to like denote the different pages, not pages, but sections.
Yeah, well,
chapters maybe.
No, I think it's saying that Alan Wake is number one.
Oh,
like he
he's
fucking
pretty
rules.
Cool. Yeah,
He's
a cool guy.
So yeah. They are saying how 2010 was the 15th anniversary of Remedy. And they go, how did it all start? Well, they give some brief background. And honestly, the story of Remedy has been covered so many times by Remedy themselves and a bunch of really cool videos that they have on their channel up on YouTube.
They do have a really good YouTube channel.
Yeah. And, Death Rally, this game's a lot of fun. It's an arcade racer, and it's their first, official game. And Sam Lake was the writer on this game. There's, very minimal flavor text in the game, but from there, they grew over time. Their team went from, maybe a handful of people to 12 to I think around 17, and it slowly expanded over time as they released Max Payne, Max Payne 1 and 2. They sold the rights to Max Payne and everything else that came with it, including, I think, the game engine and all related technologies, to Take-Two Interactive and Rockstar Games.
Who were responsible for making Max Payne 3.
Yes, later in time. And there is some connection between Remedy and Max Payne 3, even though they didn't work on the game directly. And we'll get into that in a future video, I'm sure. But basically, you know, they were part of the Finnish demo scene initially, and were about, you know, creating impressive software demonstrations and understanding, you know, how to, you know, really max out what a computer can offer in terms of, you know, graphics and, you know, interactivity and everything. So they created Death Rally from scratch. They created Max Payne from scratch. Like, they create their own game engines, which is, you know, not to get too deep into, like, you know, talking about a topic we don't really fully understand, but most games are built on a licensed engine. That's why you'll see, like, Unreal Engine, like, at the top of a game, because I think is it Epic that makes the Unreal Engine?
Yes.
You know, companies develop these game engines, then you can use that as basically the programming language and, you know, the infrastructure of your game.
Yeah. Like, think of the engine as the engine. Like, that's what makes it all, it's like the brain. Unreal Engine in particular is free to download. You can use it at any time. Like, you can go to the website right now and download it. You'll just have to license it if you use it in a commercial release.
Right, and so Remedy doesn't do that. Remedy creates their own engines, which is
pretty
impressive.
fucking cool. Yeah, that's not something that you see as often.
No. So here is where it gets really interesting to me. This is an early prototype shot of the engine that they were working on that would eventually be the engine that Alan Wake was built on.
Okay, so it looks like we're getting an idea for how the graphics and the physics are going to look and feel and act.
Yeah, and they're saying we used a strong fantasy theme to test what was possible at this time to create a AAA engine, and as you can see, the engine team was making fantastic progress, as these never-before-seen shots from early 2004 demonstrate. 2004. Wow.
And keep in mind, Alan Wake was released in 2010.
Yes, but it was in production this whole time, you know, and part of the, you know, I think it's interesting to note that part of the production of the game wasn't just the characters and the concepts. It was, well, okay, we need an infrastructure to build the game on, you know, on a technical level.
What's this mask thing I keep seeing? Is that a Max Payne thing, or is that just, this is more
Have
concept?
You seen it? Is it?
There was a golden mask a couple pages back.
Oh,
on
I
display.
I think that was different. The yeah, that's something else. That's an award that the game won.
Oh, okay.
No, what they're saying is, initially they were going to have a sort of fantasy theme to their next game after Max Payne.
Okay.
And rather than going with that, they decided to go with an idea that they had. It says, much like Max Payne had brought film noir to computer games, we became very interested in bringing the literary and film genre of the psychological action thriller to the interactive realm. So it was an idea they had discussed after Max Payne 2, which was this idea of, you know, the psychological action thriller as a game, and so they moved away from all this fantasy stuff. But these are early concepts that they were toying with as, you know, could our next game be a fantasy game?
Yeah. Oh, man. That'd be so sick.
Yeah.
I'm a really big fan of fantasy stuff. And, you know, I'm loving Alan Wake and stuff, but thinking of a similar story with that Remedy feel, with, like, wizards and swords and shit, that sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get that one day.
So here's some really sick concept art. I think that's so cool.
That does look really cool.
So this is the early beginnings of Alan Wake. I'll read this aloud. A couple of years before work commenced on Alan Wake, Sam had written the first rough draft of a movie screenplay entitled Undertow. In it, a burned-out protagonist escapes his life to a remote cabin by the lake, only to end up in the middle of a bizarre missing person case. It was a psychological thriller, and over the years we ended up borrowing a lot of material from Undertow in the development of Alan Wake. Among those things, Undertow featured a mystical diver lost in a dark place, the witch Baba Yaga and her bird-leg cabin, two senile brothers who may or may not be Viking gods, and the clicker, an old light switch, a childhood toy with magical powers. A toy Sam actually used to play with when he was a small boy, spending summers at a cabin by a lake in the Finnish countryside.
An object of power, you could say.
Yes. So, what I think is really interesting here is that, this
is originally a movie script.
Yeah, they dismantled it, and I think that's part of the reason why the story does feel so. I think the story is so strong because it's like you can see the iterations of the drafts and how they just honed it and refined it over time and just chipping away at it. But the fact that it was a first draft of a movie script to begin with, like that's obviously there's like a strong narrative there already.
Right. Yeah. And with that refinement, every time you go through again, you could probably like, oh, it'd be cool if we did this. Like, oh yeah, and that fits right here. So like the more times you do that, the more rich it becomes.
So, early iteration of what Max Payne could have looked like, or Alan Wake. I'm reading the word Max Payne.
Alan Payne. Early concept of what the wolves could have looked like.
Right. Well, that's something that they say that very early on we wanted an element of darkness to affect all living things. Bears, wolves, and birds. Ultimately, we decided not to pursue larger animals for Alan, but we held on to the taken birds. Mostly for gameplay reasons, but also because it suited the story we wanted to tell, and as a kind of homage to Alfred Hitchcock's movie, The Birds.
When I started playing American Nightmare, I was interested to see if there would be some more animal taken, and maybe that's something we'll see in the future, but not just yet.
So, again, some more concept art, which is just really cool to see, and I think a lot of this stuff is very reminiscent of the artwork you'll find in the Cauldron Lake Lodge. Like Emil Hartman has all those like fucked up paintings all over the place. I think a lot of those were concept art from the game.
Oh, that they threw in? Okay. And those are a lot of those paintings were done by Rudolph.
Yes.
Mr. Rudolph. Now we have a Star Wars character.
Yeah, so originally the Taken were called Shades, and they would wear these cloaks to hide their shadowy appearances. So, again, I mean, still pretty early on, they had more of a fantasy type presentation to the game.
Yeah. That guy looks like a badass, like, warrior.
So they eventually decided upon the Pacific Northwest for the game's setting. And you can see here, the lighthouse. They talk about how early on they wanted to make sure they used a tornado. And they implemented that in some of the early demos that were seen around 2006. So here we have building the world of Alan Wake. I don't think I've seen a shot like that.
No,
that's pretty cool. I mean, there's definitely some like aerial.
You're flying around.
Scenarios in the game, and the game opens and closes with them as well, but I haven't seen one so crisp.
That looks cool. This book is cool.
So they visited places like Astoria, Washington, and just same thing they did with Max Payne. They spent some time in New York City with, I think it was some of the Rockstar folks, and just took photos of everything. Same with Alan Wake. They went to Washington and took a shitload of photos, and this looks like Bright Falls.
It does. It seems like Remedy is also they'll do a lot of where they'll take a picture and use that as a texture in the game.
Yeah.
As seen obviously most with Max Payne being Sam Lake, like an actual image of him. I think they did that for a lot of this as well. I just punched the hell out of the table. I'm getting really into it. I think I remember hearing that they did that on those trips as well, where they would take images of walls or whatever and then use that as a texture in the game.
Yeah.
For buildings and stuff.
So you got the Bright Falls map here. By early 2005, our engine team had reviewed the visual reference photographs, and the writing and design teams had established the scope of the game world so they could finish our world construction tool set. What they delivered later that year allowed for very fast construction and iteration, and a never-before-seen amount of environmental detail. Here is a sequence for a very rough wireframe to a finished environment, which can be achieved in our engine within minutes.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy that, that it fucking works. They also, they talk about the light here and stuff.
The day and night cycle,
Yeah.
and the shading and everything. That's especially. I remember these are God rays. Is that what that's called? Mm-hmm. Those are fucking sick, and those were not very common in 2010. I think that was still a new thing. Like I don't think Skyrim had God. Well, maybe Skyrim had God rays.
Maybe it's definitely
Which came out before the next year. Actually, it came out 11/11/11.
It's a really graphically advanced game, especially in terms of lighting. Even though not all the textures hold up, the lighting is crazy.
It was a game that I didn't think needed a remaster as far as like visually, but I'm glad we're getting it.
No, yeah, I think it's going to be something that will introduce a lot more people to it.
Yeah.
So here we were talking about the casting, and you can see some early iterations of Alan.
Man, I hate that design.
Yeah.
There's something about his little scarf and his face. I don't know why, but I want to punch him in the head.
I never liked these big sunglasses
Big
on him.
sunglasses, those are a little rough.
But you can see some of the, here's Alice Wake. I think this is really funny.
I like this one.
They mention here that the actress for Sarah Breaker was initially going to be considered for the role of Alice Wake, but they're like, oh wait, no, that's Sarah Breaker. And they talk about Sarah Breaker has been a presence in the story for a long time, but her role has changed greatly from early appearances. At one point, she was a sculptor. At another, she was the radio host. For a time, she was a strong romantic interest for Alan Wake. They weren't bad ideas, but they didn't quite work. In the end, she was the, Sheriff Sarah Breaker.
I remember thinking like Alan Wake gets a little bit of flack for the character models because there's still like it was like an interim. But as I've jumped onto Control, I think like I'm blown away by how good like the lip syncing and the photorealism. Like the game so far has switched from I don't know. I didn't think it wasn't glaringly obvious like when Alan Wake switches to the live action stuff. But it never tricked me. You know what I mean? I never thought that what I was seeing in Control, I am literally struggling to tell what is animation and what is like live action footage that they shot. So it's cool to see to watch their progress of like becoming, uncanny valley levels of like I can't tell if that's a real person or not.
There's an interesting part here. They go, there's quite a bit of backstory to Hartman that we only hint at. They mention things in the game like throughout this book where they're like, there's a lot more here, and hopefully in the future we can tell you more.
Okay.
We have Barbara Jagger's.
We got a little bit more.
Here.
We got a little bit more from Emil in the comics, but only a little bit.
Yeah,
he is fleshing out his personality more so than his backstory.
His work and before and after Alan Wake is expanded a lot in the Control DLC.
All right. Wow, some of these are really great. Like looking at the back and forth with the
like
actual,
the likenesses.
Especially Mott. Mott looks, fuck man, that looks really good.
Yeah.
Carl Stuckey. I don't even remember that guy's face.
He doesn't look well.
No. Well, he was taking that big shit, remember?
At one point, he was the caretaker at Cauldron Lake Lodge, working for Dr. Emil Hartman, but he wound up owning the gas station. And then, originally Mott was the owner of the gas station in early drafts of the game. So it's funny how they had these like parts and were like over time being like, if we shift this character to this role, this benefits the story better.
That sounds so difficult to do. I've never had to do something like that, but my God.
It takes a lot of confidence.
Because you have to extract, and you got to make it believable, which they did.
The T-posing sort of Anderson brothers here.
They're establishing dominance.
There's much more to Nightingale than we've really shown thus far, and hopefully we'll get a chance to explore him more in depth in the future. And I think the final scene in Alan Wake, well, one of the final scenes, where you see Nightingale in shadow inside the house there during Deerfest, it's like he survived.
Yeah, he seems to be one of the most nuanced characters that we didn't really get a whole lot of backstory on, at least in the game. I'm really hoping we do get to see more.
They also say Zane...
He knows something.
Zane's another character we have substantial backstory for, but we quickly found he works best as a mysterious presence.
Yeah, they're right, but you bastards, I want to know.
Well, I think that's what keeps people coming back.
It is.
So, this section of the book gets into early demos, early builds of the game. Originally the game did start as an open world game. It was mission based, like open world games are, like they eventually did with Control, where Control doesn't feel like a mission based open world game to me, but it is.
Without spoilers, does the entirety of Control take place where it seems to take place?
Yes.
All right. But that's a foolish question to ask, I think. All right.
The majority of the game takes place in the oldest house, but you do.
It is a building that seems to shift.
It shifts, but also there are alternate dimensions, and a big part of the bureau is investigating and understanding different dimensions. And so obviously the game touches on that in a way where the protagonist
finds themselves in places.
Yes.
All right, that's interesting.
And I think even early on in the game you find yourself in the astral plane when you're doing the
that's true.
The first sort of gun tutorial.
Yeah, this is the scene that they cut where Alan Wake gets destroyed by a car.
Yeah. So originally the game was very short. I think about an hour in, Alan gets hit by a car and that was it. And they said, "Wait, this is fucking dumb."
He goes, "Shit." That's some of my favorite parts in Alan Wake. I don't know if we've talked about that in all these hours that we've talked about. Him just naturally reacting to the ridiculous stuff that's happening, like a shipping container falling from the sky and almost obliterating him. He just goes, "Fuck!" Like, like it makes me really laugh because it's the same reaction I have.
Once Alan had received the cabin keys from Mott, the mechanic ends from Mott, the mechanic ends the conversation with the eerie words, "Must be tough knowing that your words change things." It was quite effective in throwing everyone in the audience off. And so, this is an early iteration of the game where the gas station is Mott's gas station rather than Stucky's country oasis.
That's so bizarre. Because knowing what we know about Mott.
Yeah.
Well, and knowing,
he was different, but they changed him entirely.
Yeah. Some more cool maps.
Yeah, and so a lot of this is talking about the specifics of the early builds of the game. Here they talk about how they had all different sorts of ways for the sort of the shade shield that the Taken has. How does the light interact with the Taken and their shadow that envelops them? So you see different iterations of how the light could interact with them.
And that still seems like it has elements of like that fantasy, like in this section.
It definitely seems a lot more fantasy driven early on, and there's a weird early shot of Clay Stewart and Alan Wake in the bookstore together.
Oh yeah, you're right.
So by the end of 2007, we went into full production of the story missions.
Ooh.
And so
this shit's so cool. The lighthouse.
Here they break down all of the episodes. So you get some concept art and sketches and everything regarding the lighthouse, but it goes pretty in depth. And it's not just like here's what happens in episode 1. It's like here's how we arrived at creating episode 1, and here's some of the different iterations of the ideas we had over time.
Okay.
Which I think is a lot more interesting than just like being like, here's the game, you played it, but we're gonna show you a book of it now.
Yeah, which would be kind of dull, especially if it wasn't a story that is this rich. But it's extremely compelling to see how they got everywhere. Interesting
early version of the diner, which I'd say looks much less like the Twin Peaks diner.
Mm. It has the same rough layout, though.
Yeah, it's just they really went harder on the decor. Yeah, and they even mentioned the Twin Peaks diner right there. So.
Oh, okay. That was totally lost on me. I've never watched Twin Peaks. So.
I haven't watched that much of it. I know I probably would enjoy it if I can ever find the time to sit and watch it for that long.
Sorry, I'm just distracted by this Baba Yaga house that we have going on here.
Right. So, you know, she's a figure, a cultural figure, an ancient witch who lives in a cabin that has birds' legs.
Yeah.
And it took them a while. If you look at the final iteration of the cabin, it does have a bird-like face, sort of, and then it also
But it's a lot more toned down.
By a lot. This looks like something out of Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, they probably knew that this isn't what was going to be in the game, but they were just like, you know, it's concept art. They're getting to what they wanted to do.
Right, but so what they did, I think, eventually land on as a big compromise was the little island that the cabin is on is in the shape of a bird claw.
Really?
Mm-hmm. If you look at it from an aerial view.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, you can see it right there.
Hey, wow, I never noticed that.
Yeah.
Ha! That's cool.
So they compromised eventually.
Man, and that's the thing you would never know unless you really like sought out that information. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So
Vicious.
some more kind of art from the game. It goes through the second chapter, Taken. This is interesting, again, with the overhead with the maps and stuff. And they talk about how, you know, this section's talking about how, like, the early version of the police department was, like, too busy, too many rooms. You know, they talk a lot about how they came to refine certain ideas and pare things down for the better.
That's something I always notice in games that are trying to be more realistic. Like, think about, like, you know, 007. Those rooms and, like, the bathrooms and stuff, like, I don't know. Usually the limitations of the medium don't really allow you to create like an actually real feeling place. But I thought Alan Wake kind of treaded that line pretty well, and it never felt insulting. I'm like, yeah, this police department is a little, you know, it didn't feel like a quote unquote real one, but it was believable. It didn't like jump out at me as like wouldn't be, you know, the stairs wouldn't be here, or this bathroom is stupid. But like I thought that was cool.
It does mention the encounter with Rusty was perhaps our bloodiest in the game and was made more troubling for Alan, given that Rusty is one of the first people he meets in town. After Rusty becomes a Taken, there is clearly no going back as the town begins its descent into chaos.
He's pretty fucked up, like, before he turns.
Yeah, I thought he died when I was first playing.
This place is crazy, says Barry.
This chapter rules. I mean, they all rule, but this is where I was like really like, oh wow, this game is not like anything else I've ever played.
Mm-hmm. This is where Nightingale opens fire on Alan and Barry.
The encounter with Rose was important in presenting the idea that while the Dark Presence could completely take over certain individuals and turn them into the Taken, there were others whom it merely touched and could use to do its bidding.
Yeah.
I think that Valdivia L. Horndog from American Nightmare is an example, too, of someone who was touched by the Dark Presence but wasn't turned.
Yeah, so
entirely.
It's clear that the people that have, like Barbara and Mr. Scratch, they have different things that they want these people to do. Sometimes they want to extract information, sometimes they want to use them as a weapon.
Yeah. Interesting little breakdown of how they built the coal mine area.
I like the interviews. I got through all the interviews in the Alan Wake files. Mm-hmm. That were audio cassettes of Nightingale speaking to the different denizens. And one of them was very interesting with Rose. Because it shows that she's still under the influence of Barbara, and then... But also it shows Nightingale has like a little... Like there's some humanity in him because he tries to comfort her and try to help her once he realizes that she's not just like on drugs or whatever.
They mention that there were more intricate versions of the maze. Mm-hmm. But that they had to simplify it to accommodate the action, which is something that we talked about when we, discussed the game with Jordan. How the like I don't know if you felt this way. I felt that I wish I had a little bit more from the maze. But thinking about it, like, would I be frustrated if at the this energy's ramping up, and then it's like, oh great, I'm stuck in a fucking maze for 30 minutes.
Exactly. I do remember that part being like. A lot going on. Like it really felt like it was a big like action sequence. So yeah, I understand why they'd have to turn it down a little bit. Here's some of the cool ass paintings.
Yeah. Pretty wild art, you know.
Any one of these could be used as a black metal album cover. Like, easily.
Here's a pretty cool map of the Anderson farm.
Those are the apple trees.
Yes, and this is the area where they play. We designed the Anderson farm to reflect the backstory of our aging rockers, although clearly in a state of ruin, the Anderson farm still has a lot of life left in it. From the Viking shields studding the front of the house and the long boat strung up in the barn to the enormous dragon-crowned stage where Alan and Barry have their explosive metal battle with hordes of Taken.
Who wrote this? Is there a direct writer on this guide?
No. They mention that I think it was someone in Remedy that wrote it. They say we a lot.
Yeah, that's what prompted me to ask.
They mentioned that earlier drafts of the script were more explicit in stating that like Thor and Odin were Thor and Odin, like, and actually had their powers. And that, you know, Thor used his lightning power to, because, you know, the stage, there's no power. There's no electricity on the stage. There's a big lightning strike, and that's what sparks the battle, and that's what sparks, you know, everything acting up. And so it was more obvious in early drafts that Thor used his lightning powers to do that, but they kind of shied away from
it seems like
that idea.
They're trying to keep those two mysterious, but it's clear that they have a much larger presence in the story.
Yeah.
Maybe more so in the past than they do in the present. The well-lit room. That shit looks so cool.
Yeah.
I would shoot a music video here. You know what I mean? Like it's pretty sick. Maybe I will, Matt.
Maybe you will. You can you can make it in Unity or something.
Oh, and then just green screen us into it. That'd be sick. Yeah.
This is also really cool, just seeing the downtown of Bright Falls.
That was another sequence that I felt like I had so much momentum because I was just like so engaged and I wanted to get to the next part that I wasn't stopping to smell the roses because I was so like, what's the next part? You know?
Yeah. Well, it is a very different game. We won't deny the influence of Left 4 Dead on this mission, talking about the mission where you and Sheriff Breaker go through downtown.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And
that was so fun.
Yeah, I can definitely see the Left 4 Dead influence on that section.
Jordan didn't like the co-op, right? But you and I did?
He liked the co-op with Breaker more than the co-op with Mott. I thought the co-op with Mott was fine.
I liked both. I really enjoyed it. I would absolutely love to, like, if you could play like American Nightmare Horde mode with a buddy, I think that'd be awesome.
So the move away from an open world game meant that some environments would never be used or would be reserved for future games. Others, like the Majestic Motel, allowed us to fill in more of the backstory. This little dive was where out-of-towners like Agent Nightingale and Clay Stewart stayed during their time in Bright Falls. And it is interesting to think, you know, what did they cut from the game that wound up in later games?
Hey, I'm thinking about this right now. You know, the band of people that Breaker, what's his first name? Sarah's father, Frank Breaker, the people that he assembles, well, I guess via Barry that makes all the phone calls. I could totally see a game where you play as them fighting off hordes of the Taken.
Yeah.
You know, and that's Left 4 Dead, you know?
Yeah, essentially.
That'd be very fun. Here we have some Barbara.
Yeah, so this talks a bit more about
that looks cool.
You know, early versions of her and the final encounter with her and how it all works. Defying the feel of the dark place was a challenge for us. Just how do you create an alternate dimension under a lake? This place that is the source of the dark presence and all associated strangeness without diminishing the sense of mystery and the unknown that gives it that narrative power. And that's the other thing that they do mention right here is that the dark place is under the lake. And I think when I first played the game, I struggled to understand, like, did he like actually like go in the lake and like, is that like a threshold like that, you know, that is between dimensions and you pass through and are in the other place?
Like a portal?
Yeah, it seems like it is. So they mention the Max Payne dream levels, which one of the coolest parts of Max Payne is, you know, he has these like sort of like hallucinations and dream sequences that are very similar to like the end of Alan Wake, and I thought there's a connection there, and they do mention it right here. So.
Okay. Unused material.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so this is really interesting to me as someone who's. I feel like I know so much about what's in the game. It's cool to learn about what's not in the game.
Like, yeah, I don't know who that woman is.
So they say that this prop is actually still in the game somewhere if you can find it, but there was originally a fully functional little ball maze, and it's interesting because Resident Evil Village has these. And
Yeah.
they're really fun. There was also a museum that they didn't use. That would have been a fun area to check out.
Yeah, maybe that gives you more history on Bright Falls.
But also, thinking about the game now, like where would that fit in? Like even the historical information in the national park there, it's not extremely dense, but like it with the pacing, it's like I wouldn't know if I would be as excited to read that much history. More history than I already did in those areas.
That's a good point.
Bears
and wolves.
You can maybe get an understanding why they didn't use the wolves.
Because they look really cool.
They look pretty goofy. So they said that the amount of work it would take to get them to the quality they needed to fit them in the game, they just went against doing it.
All right.
You have early iterations of the town. A particle accelerator. Now, someone online mentioned to me like, there's a particle accelerator in Bright Falls, and I was like, whoa, that's crazy. I didn't realize that the version of the map they're talking about may have been an earlier version of the map that, didn't actually make it in the game. So it's unclear to me if the particle accelerator is something that is in Bright Falls and just got cut from the game as a location, or if the concept got entirely cut out. I'm not sure about that.
Oh, okay.
But it is interesting that there would be a particle accelerator in Bright Falls, and they said it was part of a playable level set around the Moorcock Institute, which sounds a lot like the observatory in the way they're describing it.
Yeah.
That's in American Nightmare.
Okay, that's cool.
So they said they had a sawmill at one point that they deconstructed and used for several different areas. We see something like a sawmill several times in the game.
There's tons of like industrial logging and construction stuff.
This is interesting. There's a dream stage where dream sections would happen in the game, and they end up, instead going with the writer in the cabin TV show. But that there would have been almost like a sitcom stage with an audience and everything where Wake would have dreams.
Oh, that would have been interesting.
There's also a fully functional racetrack where you can go and just race people anytime you wanted as a little mini game.
That'd be fun. I don't know. Are you racing the Taken or Barry or who?
I don't know. So next they talk about missions that were cut from the game, and they give full detailed breakdowns of these different missions.
And check this out. Is that a person wearing a robe?
Yeah, that's one of the early versions of the Taken.
That's cool.
Yeah, in the cloak there. I like the Barry graphic is.
Is that just a T-pose?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's not a full T, but.
Like a wilted T.
So it also looks like there's a very tiny Alice in the rubble here.
Yeah, the hubcap.
Yeah, so these are just placeholder graphics, but I'm not reading these in full here, but you can pause the video and check it out. So, they do give full breakdowns of different missions that would have been in the game over time, and it points it was a very different feeling game.
Stop the train, CJ. The plane. There was something early on in the game. I think I didn't have a chance to mention this in our first I've played of Alan Wake. There was a scene early on in the game that Alan mentioned. He's like, "There's a plane. It crashed. I'm glad I'm not there," or something like that. I never saw the plane until I think like towards the end of the game.
Yeah, you're deep in the forest. There's like a crashed plane there.
Yeah, but he mentions it early in the game, and I don't know. Maybe
I don't remember that.
Maybe you see it crashing. I remember I took a note. And I was like, they mentioned a plane, but I don't remember. I didn't see it. I looked around in that area.
Was it mentioned in a manuscript page?
That's what I don't remember.
Oh, because if it was a manuscript page, it would make sense that you didn't see it.
I feel like I was moving as I heard him say it, so not to toil on something that I can or can't remember, but maybe it was in a manuscript page, and it just took me, it was just planting that seed to find it later. What are you looking at?
I'm going to ask you to stop kicking the table if
I'm
you can.
kicking the table.
There's an interesting scene here where there was a UFO situation.
Okay.
I'm kind of glad they didn't keep that.
Especially if it was kind of just a nothing situation.
Yeah, there was also going to be a large fire that you had to navigate through, which there's some really cool fire scenarios in Max Payne.
Okay.
And it seems like they were maybe trying to iterate on that idea.
We get a little bit of that in American Nightmare as well.
Yeah, a little bit. And it seems like, from what I read, some of the ideas that didn't make it into this game or the proposed sequel did find their way, into American Nightmare.
Wow, that looks pretty fleshed out.
Yeah, well, if you see here, they have all the different beats of the story.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, so it'd be a whole scripted thing where you go through this fire.
Fire bad.
Yeah, it is. And they give a pretty detailed breakdown of that mission.
That's pretty cool. Like, you almost get like more game content.
Yeah. There was a whole thing involving a lighthouse that they eventually had to cut out, which is a shame. It sounded like an interesting mission.
Lighthouse seemed like it was a little underused, but at the same time, it was highlighted a lot.
Right. I think it was more of a symbol eventually,
Yeah.
There's also a cut mission where you just come face to face with Barbara Jagger like this in this strange grove.
Oh, wow. I wonder if it goes into detail as to how much of it was produced. Like, did they record all the dialogue for it just to have it cut out?
It seems like different levels were in different, stages of completion. I mean, because it was, it was a very different game for a long time.
For sure.
Here you have some very low res
Yeah, this looks like a GTA
art of a map. And that's it. I mean, that's basically what's in that book. Again, I didn't stop and read every goddamn page in detail.
God damn it.
But, I have in my own time. But just wanted to, I'd say casually flip through the book.
You could say that we just we were flipping through this Alan Wake Illuminated.
I picked this up on eBay. You can find it on eBay. I don't think you can get a new copy.
700-800?
Yeah, before shipping, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's pretty good.
Yeah. I'd highly recommend it. I haven't seen a scan of this book or anything online. I saw a couple other videos. I saw one video where someone literally spends 15 seconds just flipping it like a flip book. And then
like an animation flip book?
Yeah, there's another video where a lady gives a review of the book, but it's as much of a review of the book as an object.
More so than it is the contents within?
I would say equal attention is given to both. But it doesn't go very in depth as to what is actually in the book,
Unlike
she really critiques the layout a lot. Okay. and the actual, construction.
Well, here at Hidden Machine, we like to go really in depth. We like to go deeper than that surface level shit.
You've slapped the books so many times
do I do a lot of book?
You're not going to hurt it.
I feel like there needs to be some sort of visual, like, to how just intense I'm feeling at this moment in the middle of Waketober, Matt.
You know what? Real quick as a bonus, grab that novel one more time.
I'll grab it.
Because I don't think we're going to do a flipping through of this, but, I do want to mention this real quick as well.
Yeah, we could.
We won't.
It's all text, though.
So this is a novelization of Alan Wake written by Rick Burroughs. As opposed to the Quantum Break novelization, which is again a non-canonical story, but it's Quantum Break's about alternate timelines and traveling through time and space, and so
is anything really canonical in that sense?
In that sense, but also it's just like, here's the same story, but what if some crucial choices made early on were different, and it's an entirely different take on what could have happened. It's another thread of reality. Anyway, I guess my point is that it and you can grab that one too if you want to just show it real quick.
Oh, I'm knocking over all the other stuff.
Doesn't matter. This stands on its own as its own work, where you wouldn't have to have played the game to read this per se, and it's its own thing.
I can totally see myself in high school seeing somebody reading a book like that, like of a video game, and being like, that's the dorkiest shit I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, well,
and I think sometimes that's true, but it seems like in these examples, it's actually good.
Well,
is that the used bookstore online?
Yeah,
that's where I buy my books.
This, I've read through half of it or so. It's nice. It's fine. It doesn't add anything to the experience, and so I think that when Remedy saw how this came out, which it's fine, but you know what's a better way of experiencing the story of Alan Wake?
Playing the game.
Playing the fucking game. Whereas, a great way to experience an all-new Quantum Break story? Read the book, because you're not going to get the same information that you got in the game. It's its own thing. So
having that novelization is kind of cool for people that aren't gamers that were intrigued by the story.
Yeah,
but
sure.
You could still put on easy mode or watch a Let's Play.
Right, and at the same time, though, I think it's there's so much about the story and the way it's delivered that breaking it from the medium, you're not really getting the experience. You're basically getting a synopsis of the game, of the experience. I shouldn't say the game. I mean, of the overall experience. Of the discovery, the pacing, the visuals, the voices. Like, it's all you're getting out of something like this is a summary of one perspective of the experience. And you're missing so much of what makes it a memorable experience. And, that's not the case with this one. But I figured, where else are we going to talk about these little books? I'm not going to give a full detailed review of this. It's the story of Alan Wake. It's written competently.
Okay.
It's pretty good. I think you would have fun reading it if you're an Alan Wake fan, just to see like a different take on the story. But it's not canon. Neither of these are canon. And they're pretty good. This one's better. Just wanted to share that real quick. So anyway.
They're pretty sick.
That's another Waketober video in the can, so to speak.
We got so many of these Waketober videos coming out. You've probably seen them all by now, but if you haven't, go check out the channel. We're celebrating the remaster that has come out on October 5th. We're probably playing it right now.
Yeah, so that's what I'm doing. I took one hand away from the controller, but I'm going to get back to it if you don't mind.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, in the meantime, let us know what you think about Alan Wake and continue enjoying Alan Waketober on Hidden Machine.
You suck.
Fuck, I almost had it. Alan? Alan!